Hello, and welcome to the Write Club podcast, where we take you behind the pages and into the fascinating world of writing. I'm Beth, and this is Mary, and we're part of the team at Writing Magazine and Writers Online. Hi, Mary, how are you?
I'm really well, thank you. I'm very excited about our guest this week. Renay Richardson is an award-winning producer, author, and advocate for social change. She is the creator of the acclaimed podcast Human Resources and now co-author of the book Human Resources, Slavery and the Making of Modern Britain. Renay unpacks this complex history through the lens of everyday objects, places, and institutions, offering an accessible and eye-opening perspective.
Hi, Renay. Welcome to the Write Club podcast. Where are you joining us from today?
I'm at home in Woodford.
Is that your writing space?
Yeah.
Is that where you do most of sort of like your creative work there?
Yeah, pretty much everything: podcasting, writing, looking after the kids, looking after the animals, gardening.
Human Resources, Slavery and the Making of Modern Britain is a really powerful and timely book. Can you share how the idea for the book came about?
Yeah, so it was in 2020, and everyone knows what 2020. We were, locked in our houses, and we were forced to we couldn't look away from the news. And so we had George Floyd, there was various kind of racial instances and events that happened. And I just remember I was on Twitter one day and there was an exchange between Andrew Neil and a TV producer about slavery and abolition. And Andrew Neil basically said, if it wasn't for Britain, slavery wouldn't be abolished. And I just thought, because I didn't know enough about slavery, and I was just like, is that true? Was that our only involvement? So that's how we decided to come up with doing the podcast. And when I did the podcast, I'm a big advocate for when you have an important subject, try and get it in every medium as possible. And so I knew starting the podcast that I definitely wanted to do a book. The book possibly that I had in mind was more of a picture book, just with sometimes it depended this was right at the beginning of the idea. So I didn't even know what we were going to find because not everything you can take a picture of. But I knew I wanted things or people or whatever, and an explanation of how that's linked to slavery, just because one of the things that kept coming up was people like, hasn't it already been done? Don't we already know about that? And I remember being in a place when I used to live in Walthamstow, I mentioned that I'd got the book deal and was working on this book. And she said, hasn't it already been written about though? And I was like, I mean, yes, but do we say that about World War II, World War One? Is there a cap? Or is it only slavery that has the cap?
Very good point.
Yeah. So that's where the idea came from. It literally was me trying to learn more, but also getting it out there for other people to make it accessible.
It's so accessible. I've been reading it and it's fascinating. And I love the way that it's little objects or events and you think, oh my God, I had no idea that was the origin of that. On the bus this morning, I've just read the chapter about mahogany and I was like, I'll never look at a piece of mahogany furniture the same way again.
Yeah. And that's because people always think it's so far behind. Like, why are we still talking about it? This is one of the only things that people say that to. We still talk about the World Cup. We won it once, but here we go. But yeah, so people are like, why are you still caught up on that? Not me, but like, why are people still trying to talk about it? And it's like, because it's all around us and we haven't actually acknowledged it yet still. So I think and the more people we can kind of show the origins of, or how things are linked, or how things were developed, because we're not saying slavery created all of these things, but some of them were developed, like medicine and gynecology and accounting and things like that. They were honed and developed using these practices during slavery, and that's what we're trying to get people to remember.
Between the two of you, how did you decide which 39 stories to tell?
Well, we had a list, me and Arissa. Well, we had a big list from the podcast. It was like over 100 things. And so we'd done the podcast series, and then we had a list of things we hadn't quite covered in the podcast and wanted to do more of. And So we just went through and marked the ones we were interested in on our list. And then that's basically how it happened. We put our names next to it and was like, okay, I'll do this one. And then what was left over, kind of I did some as well. Like I did some of Arissa's ones that she was interested in, like quilts and Swing Low Sweet Chariot, which is kind of music and things like that. But yeah, it was basically we just put our names next to the things we were interested in looking into.
Oh, amazing. And obviously, as you've mentioned, it did begin as a podcast and it's been widely celebrated. And what challenges did you face in translating sort of the depth and the accessibility of that podcast into a written format?
The hardest thing we found was the interviews, using interviews, because podcast it would be about 11, because we always provided the transcripts. So a podcast would be about 11, 14 pages per subject, and each podcast was one subject. Whereas a book, we had to reduce down and also not rely on the interviews. It's like we had to do the interviews, but interpret what the person was saying to us. Rather than, because otherwise then it would just be quotes and that's not enjoyable to read. So that was one of our biggest challenges, reducing down, because with the podcast interviews, some of the interviews were, an hour and a half, and then I would go in and edit them. We'd get it on the script, on the page, and Moya would then do script around it, and then we'd do an end edit again, but it'd still be like 9 to 12 pages. Whereas the book was, had to get it down. Like reduce. What's important? But also you're covering so much. You're like, what is important? What are we leaving out? What should we include? And we wanted to make sure we're explaining everything, because like any terms that come up, like triangular trade, for example, explain it, because one of the things that can lose people is that you assume they know. And then if they don't, and if you've not explained it, then you've lost them already. So it was key for us to explain if a war came up during a period, explain it. What is it? What was going on? Just explain. So then we had to add that in as well. So it's like, it was a lot of what to leave out, really.
Yeah, it's really interesting for us because we're coming at it from the opposite way, really, because Writing Magazine has been a print product for years and years and years, and now me and Beth are trying this podcast way of doing it, which we love, and it's so different, but it's kind of expanding little bits. So it's interesting.
Yeah, it's nice for us to actually get all of that information, like you say, because you're having to narrow everything down and take out bits that maybe you're like, oh, I don't know, but I've got to get rid of it because I don't have enough space.
Yeah.
Whereas we're like, oh wow, this is amazing. We're getting all this extra information that we couldn't have in the print magazine. So it's brilliant.
That's why I always think book and podcasts go together. I think they're a perfect medium for hand in hand. I think authors make great podcasters, or if they don't want to like actually have their voice out, great writers of a podcast. And podcasts don't make great books, like if you wanted to adapt one into the other. So I think they just go hand in hand.
Yeah, there's space for both, isn't there?
Yeah.
The one at the expense of the other.
Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've been really lucky that the people that we've contacted and people that have reached out to us to come on the podcast, we've had so many amazing stories and people that have come on here. And we thought originally, oh, we're going to get people on here because the authors want to talk to us, and actually they do, and the stories that they are telling us are absolutely incredible. So, and we've had such good feedback from it as well, which is great.
Yeah, I just think it's one, because someone will find if it's a certain topic or a person or a book, they'll find it one way or the other, but it will lead them to the other one. So it's just an extra way to get a message out, which I think is luckily being utilized now.
Yeah, 100%. And some of going back to your book, some of the revelations in your book, like the origins of denim and treadmills, are really surprising. Were there anything that you discovered during your research that left you just baffled?
Kind of, to be honest, it's not well, it was the royals. I think they really managed to like skate over, like, or gloss over a lot of their history. And why is that allowed? Why, as Brits, do we allow that? I don't understand. So, it's the royals kind of just their how involved they were and how it's not really coming up, or they don't have, the current monarchy hasn't had to address it. They kind of talk about it from a distance, like, oh, those people were, it was an awful thing that happened over those years ago by those people. And it's like, it was your family, literally your family. Your bank account is directly influenced by what has happened. And so I just find it odd that how has that been allowed?
Like you said before, we can say, oh, Britain was responsible for the abolishment of slavery. It's like we love to play that role, don't we? But you've got to look at the truth.
Yeah, abolished it after hundreds of years of participating.
Yeah.
And also the kind of, I feel like that narrative kind of makes it seem like it was a humanitarian decision.
Yeah.
And it was. That's why we wanted to go into abolition a little bit more. And I think it's the Wisbech chest chapter that kind of looks at abolition and how it was lobbied for and how people didn't want it and how the government had to bribe the slave owners with this compensation and alternative ways to exploit the land. Then they were like, okay, fine. I'll do it. But it wasn't, oh my God, this is terrible. We need to end this, which is what the narrative kind of suggests. But yeah, so those kind of things I find surprising. It's just that it hasn't been addressed. Even the way the companies who are addressing their history are talking about it and the line they draw between like indirect and direct. Because the Bank of England indirectly is what their official stance, but it's like you owned 2 plantations, so that's direct. Also, you loaned a lot of people the money so they could buy plantations or they could buy slaves. So again, to me, that's direct. But it's the lines that these imaginary lines of how they are willing to address their involvement that I find quite interesting, because it's like, just, I understand it's a part of history that they're ashamed of, but it is your history. So let's just get it out there. Let's just be open and address it.
Yeah, you can't change it. And no one's actually saying that we're going to get rid of all these things that came about on the back of slavery. It's just be honest about it and let's talk about it. Because actually it's really interesting as well, a lot of the history, isn't it?
Exactly. Because it's just, I just don't see how the industry would have been so industrious had it not had insurance and loans, access to loans and things like that. So that's, you're an integral part. So let's just say, just say we were the key to slavery.
You're now juggling multiple roles, from podcasting to writing. What does a typical workday look like for you, and how do you find the time to balance it all?
Well, I'm currently on maternity leave. So with towards the final like edits of the book, I was juggling. I think I did a copy edit read 2 weeks after I had my baby.
Oh wow.
But I was like, because they were worried about sending it, and I was like, no, this is the best time because newborns sleep. So if I'm going to do anything, it's actually now. And luckily she did sleep. So at the moment, it's more my baby goes down at 4 because I'm working on another proposal now. So I'm not at 4, at 2. So it means between 2 and 5:30, I can get solid 3.5 hours of working on that proposal without any interruptions. And then I pick up my 2-year-old who's at nursery. But yeah, so I'm kind of treat it like I'm at work still, and I just do my solid, let's get this research done, let's get some writing on the page, Tuesdays to Thursdays. That's when
are you slightly more productive because you know you've got less time?
I think so, yeah, because I've really got to make those 3 days work for me. So I think I do a little bit more, and definitely when I was writing the book as well, I really just took my daughter to nursery and then would treat it like I was going to work. Just came in because I used to start work at 10, so by 10 at the computer writing. If I was lucky, I'd get a lunch break. If I needed to work through, I'd work through, and then I'd do that until 5:30 and then go and get her. So I was very regimented because I knew I was using reduced days for the writing, so I could, do that.
What was the writing process like? Was there lots of revisions? Did you have a
Yeah.
draft or...
I'll be honest, at first I had no idea what I was doing because I didn't go to university, which I think would have helped because I've never had to write something long, which you do your dissertation at the end. I think that's at least helps you do that. So I didn't go to uni, so I was complete novice. So I just had, and I also find it hard, this is even with podcasting, to write when I'm not inspired. Like, I just think it's very hard. I used to find it hard to work on podcasts when I just wasn't feeling inspired. Even if you're just doing an edit, I still think you need that oomph to, make something good. So I found it really hard at first to even write anything. I would just sit and just stare at the wall and just be like, it's just not working out for me. And then finally I had a deadline. I was like, well, I have to give something in. So I just gave in something. I knew it was bad, but after I knew I just needed some kind of note. And then from that, I knew what I was doing.
You need the bulk of it and then you can start working with it.
Yeah, because otherwise you just carry on, but like it's all gonna be bad. So I might as well just send it in, get some notes, and then I can like adapt and then work to what I know I meant to be doing now, that's what happened to me.
How did you and Arissa, did you divide the workload and then that was completely your own thing, or did you review each other's bits?
No, it was completely our own thing because she's not a professional. Well, she's a historian. She's a historian of a different period, but she is a historian and I'm not. And so once we had our chapters, Arissa, and she's also doing her PhD, so she was working around that. So she worked on her chapters. Like she had a set amount to do and then worked on them and gave her to our editor separately and then worked on them. I could read hers, she could read mine, but it was more, we took the notes from the editor and then they kind of helped us align them so they made sense together. Just with how we were talking about enslaved people, just using the same terminology throughout, so it's in uniform. And I would stop saying I sometimes, unless apart from the chapter about surnames, which was about my surname, I'd say I less sometimes. And if I was talking about us as the podcast or us as the team, but when I was doing a direct interview, I would say I spoke to them. And then when I was talking about my name, obviously it's about my name, so it's about me. But even writing the introduction, I wrote about us from third person. So I said, Renay feels like da 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 da, and Arissa feels, so that you wouldn't know who wrote it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was some of that kind of thing happened.
Oh wow, I can imagine that being quite a difficult like headspace to get yourself into as well, like having to change the way that you think to be like almost pretending to be somebody else.
It was harder, but that's why the editors, they really helped us. Like John and Cecily really helped us like get it together, and just with the notes. Even what I found confusing was how to write numbers, because there's so many facts and dates are easy, but like the percentages, the money and things like that, you just want it to be clear. You don't want to, and then so profile have like a set thing, but I just couldn't get my head around it because I kept halfway through I'd change it. I'm like, is this right? Probably not. And we didn't want to like bombard as well with like facts, but you have like as in dates and numbers and things like that, but you do have to have a certain amount because to make people be able to place where and when, and there's a lot of converting to modern day, so you understand the value
Yeah, sure.
what things work. So yeah, because if you don't do that, you kind of lose the impact.
Yeah, if someone's saying, oh, they made £3 and you're like, well,
yeah. Exactly, like the compensation I think was really important to like understand. I think they were like, the average was like 4,000 something, but converted that to today's money would be over 200 grand.
Wow.
So imagine you got 200 grand.
Yes,
that's
life-changing.
pretty great amount for you to do. And when things like businesses where, I mean, we can only assume because we haven't got their bank account. But you can assume if you got £200,000 and then all of a sudden you've got a successful brewery business, if we 1 + 1 does equal 2 sometimes. So you can say that that is a link there, but we haven't got the actual bank account. Did he take the money from there to, you know? So, but I think a lot of things can be, once you have the numbers, you can assume, because you would know what you would do, and you know the value of that in a business.
When you've just lost one business as well.
Yeah, exactly. So so those figures were life-changing amounts, as you said, and they would have a big impact on what you were able to do, what you were able to access, and how you were able to build a global brand, or a national brand from that amount.
Yeah, I find it massively fascinating. So what's next for you then? Is there anything new that you're working on that you can share with us?
Yeah, I mean, I'm working on a proposal at the moment. I'm really obsessed with fertility and women's health, just our lack of knowledge about it. So I'm working on something in that area, just about how, we're not encouraged to have fertility MOTs. Most people don't even know what one is. We're not encouraged to learn about our cycles and things like that. So I'm just really intrigued and just invested in that area at the moment, because I had both my kids with fertility treatment, and I went in knowing nothing. And it was because it's in the private sector, they kind of rely on you to have done all the research. You're like, that can't be right. So yes, I'm working on something in that area, and that's an area I'm really that needs reform, basically.
That'd be fascinating. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, the gynecology chapter in human resources made me so cross.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's kind of, I get obsessed with things when there's injustices and when things are just wrong still today. I become obsessed with it. I'm like, I have to do something, which is what I used to do with podcast. I used to make a podcast about it, because I'm like, someone has to do something. Because just sometimes when you can't change laws, or if you're not that, because that's not really my area, you can just telling the stories, spread awareness via content does work.
I mean, that's definitely something that I will need to read, because I'm exactly the same. I mean, I'm a 25-year-old woman and I have no idea about any of that kind of stuff.
Exactly. It's just odd that I'm like, how has this been allowed?
Yeah, so
That we
true. I
have
mean,
no idea.
some sort of, what was it you said, a fertility MOT? I need one of those.
But it's even like, I just think also that fertility clinics kind of rip you off. Because I bought they encourage you to buy 3 rounds or whatever it is, but if you get pregnant, they then discontinue. They don't pass on your unused rounds. You can't use if you get to 20 weeks pregnant, basically they write it off.
Oh, wow.
So then if you were to go and have treatment again, say you lost the baby, say something happened, Joe, or you were pregnant, I don't know, or wanted to get pregnant within the year, you can't you have to buy new rounds.
Wow.
Even though you paid that money for the unused rounds. Yeah, so I'm just like, how does that make sense?
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't
How
it?
does it make sense? And yeah, and go and get a fertility MOT.
Yeah, I mean, you think as well, like, normally you wouldn't go to something like that unless you were trying to get pregnant. But if actually it's something that, for me, thinking about now was going to help me like a few years down the line, if that's
I think
something that I decide to do.
Yeah, was there a birth control app called, I think it's called Natural Cycles,
Yeah,
which
is that
was
the one that they give you the
the
ovulation?
monitor. Yeah, you get
Yeah.
they you're meant to track your ovulation and your temperature. Because then it tells you, like, basically don't have sex during these days, because then
Yeah.
this is when you'll get pregnant. That's kind of teaching people to know their cycles, because we're not taught to, unless you want to get pregnant, track your ovulation. Actually, if you track your ovulation, if you want to avoid pregnancy, great way to do that. And so it's these kind of things that I'm just like, how have we been? I got to 37 and had my first fertility MOT, and I didn't even know what a follicle was. I came out of there and had to Google it, because I was like, why do I not know this? And so it's just, so I'm big on that area now. I'm like, let's spread the education.
There's another really interesting book that you might be interested in. You might have already heard of it. I think it's called Red, and it's by Lisa Lister, and she
Yeah.
does some really interesting work on all that stuff as well.
Yeah, because they're the types of books I'm reading right now. Because I'm just seeing to see what's out there, and just to because also another thing is that I found with my both pregnancies was that I had to find all of my information, pretty much like the fertility stuff, on Instagram and TikTok. And it's very odd because I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Why? Over 1 million babies have been born via IVF, and IVF isn't the only fertility treatment out there. So there's many more. But I'm getting good information from, and Instagram and TikTok is not bad. You're getting good info, but why
Mhm.
isn't it mainstream?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why isn't it in all the medic? Where's it in the books? Like, unless you get an infertility book, and I wasn't infertile. So it's like, why is that? Why are we missing out this whole audience? It's like same-sex couples and single people who have children basically
Mm.
need fertility, regardless of what your whether you're infertile or not, or have infertility issues or not, that you
Mhm.
have to, that's the only way.
Yeah.
Yet all of the information you need is in infertility spaces and Instagram.
Oh, yeah, it's missing a massive piece, isn't it?
Yeah. So I want to bring it into the mainstream because it is mainstream.
Same thing with like contraceptive
Yeah.
methods as well, isn't it? Because I mean, I've been on the pill since I was what, 15, maybe 16, and I've never been told the long-term effects of those. It's been 10 years, and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, is this going to affect
Well,
me?
I was just
Like,
reading a paper about it, and basically because we've got social media now, more women are speaking out.
mhm.
But then the medical community are kind of like, no, you're just kind of spreading, they call it hormonophobia,
Right.
like a fear of hormones. And it's
Yeah.
like, no, they're talking their lived experience. Like, they're just talking about, this is how I felt when I was on it. And
Mhm.
people have valid opinions, but because they want us to take it, it's kind of, those opinions are being shut down. And you're right, the long-term effects, like, it's a very under-researched area. Like, any condition in pregnancy, under-researched. You find something, if you have, I don't know, pelvic girdle pain is what I had. You go and you find that, you go to try and Google the cause, and it says this is a very under-researched area. Like, how? We've all been born.
Yeah.
Every single person on the planet
That's
has
such a
been
good
born.
point.
How is it niche? How is it under research? So it's just a very weird space that is kind of marked, it's like targeted as niche. You're like,
Mm.
but yet we all wouldn't be here if we
Yeah.
weren't born or someone was pregnant.
I've literally never thought of it like that either. That's crazy.
It's like the most unniche thing there is.
It's having the conversations, isn't it? Which I guess is all those conversations are coming out with people having podcasts and just
Yeah,
different ways of being able to talk about things and not
yeah,
silenced and not.
yeah, exactly,
So
exactly.
it's a
Yeah,
great
yeah.
thing. Um, as an award-winning producer and now author, what advice would you give to aspiring writers, especially those tackling complex and sensitive topics?
I would obviously still need, I'm a novice writer, I still need advice. But what I always said with podcasts and anything that you're interested in, just do it. I think you can think yourself in circles, and you can think about an idea and think about an idea, and then years and years will pass, and then you've got nothing to show from it. I would say just do it. Not necessarily, you don't have to put it out there, but give it to someone to read, get advice, like get some notes, and then try and get it made or get it written so you can get a book deal. Because yeah, I've seen so many people, I like in podcast spaces, people always used to ask me like, oh, what can you do? What can I do to make a podcast, become a podcast, make the podcast? Then you are a podcaster. Write the book, then you are an author. Or then you are a writer. And I see that same advice with scripts and things like that. You have to write it because you can think yourself in circles, and you can like think, oh, I'm not ready, or just do it. Yeah. So that's my advice for everything creative. Just have a go.
That's brilliant. Perfect advice. We always end by asking for a book recommendation. What do you have for us?
So I had a meeting about the book and I was talking about adolescence. TV show, because I was like, what? Because I think my book is a good book to read for parents and teenagers to read and see what they take from it together. So I was going to say, what other books can you read together? And they recommended this one called England Is Mine, which I've just started, by Nicholas Padamsey. Might have said that wrong. But it's basically about two boys and radicalization. Because that's because I was just like, obviously everyone's talking about adolescence and so I'm reading this one, and it's just a way, because I've always been obsessed with not the radicalization part, but why do people feel disenfranchised, and then they're susceptible to radicalization, right? So that's a book. This book is about two boys stories, an English boy and a Muslim boy, set in Essex. I would also recommend Empire of Pain, and that's about the Sacklers and the Oxycontin epidemic, because I think it's important when we're thinking about radicalization, people feeling disenfranchised. Greed is a big part of that, and that book is so good. It made my blood boil just looking at that family's, like, how they just put money over anything else. And I think it's such a good book. It kind of I remember I was reading it with a colleague, and we both thought we'd seen a film. Like, we were like, do you remember that scene where they did that? And we were like, it was in the book. There's a chapter in the book. It's so vivid in painting the picture, like you imagine the scenes, but it wasn't. It was, we were reading the book, because there have been TV shows about it, but the scene we were talking about wasn't in the book. It's called Empire on Pain. Patrick Radden Keefe.
Add that to the list.
Empire on Pain. Read it. It'll make your blood boil. But it kind of shows us why communities don't have things, why people are left behind because of the greed, and how services that are much needed are kind of being. And it's obviously, that's an American one, but it's the same here. Yeah. So those two sides of the same business.
Amazing. To be fair, we've actually just read a book called The Best of Everything for our book club that we do, which is an episode that comes out once a month.
Yeah.
And that's a book that by the end of it, I was like, okay, this is nice, happy ending, great. But the whole way through the book, I was just getting angry. I was so fuming because it's about this. And she's just like struggling, basically. Everything that happens in her life, everything's just going against her. And then you see this other family who are a white British family who are just basically being handed everything on a plate. And I was just getting so fuming.
Have you read Educated?
I've read that.
Because I felt the same with Educated, because I was like, it was like, what, a #1 bestseller, New York Times bestseller, and lots of copies sold, millions of copies sold. Good book. It's a good book. I enjoyed it, but I was like, wow, had she been not white and blonde,
yeah,
she wouldn't have. I mean, she basically just was given a place at Oxford and Cambridge. And I was like, because I read it and I was like, oh, so it's easy. It's easy to get in. You just need a teacher to vouch for you, but not if you're black. Consider myself someone who's failed by education, and I just know if you don't have that's why when I was thinking of my kids going to school, it's really important where, because I went to school in Essex, and in year 9, like, the teacher said I was slow, wanted to move me to foundation classes and things like that. And then my mum changed schools. I went to a theatre school thing, so dropped half the lessons and was doing singing and dancing, but then I did higher level everything and passed. So it just means it was that school. But when a teacher backs you, you have the whole support, you have everything you need. And she had teachers who wanted her to do well, which just very rarely happens if you're a child from an ethnic minority background. And I just think that was one of the biggest things missing from the conversations around that book. Is like, that would only happen to a blonde white girl who was kind of cute and someone wanted to save. Even if she was ginger, even if she was brunette, it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
And I just think it's just missing from that whole narrative.
Why we need all the stories, don't we? We need stories from all different. And yeah, I mean, the best of everything is a brilliant book, Kit DeWall.
Yeah, I'm gonna add that.
It's a great book. As long as you don't mind being like having your blood boiling a little
But you
bit.
said it's a happy ending, so I don't mind.
Yeah.
It's when it's kind of because Empire and Pain isn't a happy ending, and you're just like, oh, but I guess that's real life.
Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah, and then I read like Crazy Rich Asians to feel happy, so it's fine. That's my favorite trilogy of books. They make me so happy.
Well, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you today.
And the baby stayed asleep.
Yeah, it's been great having you on. So thank you for taking time out of your day to come and chat to us.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, book is out, and the podcast is find the podcast Human Resources in any podcast app.
Brilliant. I definitely recommend both. Thanks for tuning into the Write Club. We hope you enjoyed this episode and feel inspired to keep writing. Don't forget to sign up for our newsletter at Writers Online, your go-to for writing tips, competitions and exclusive updates. Plus, you'll never miss an episode of the Write Club. Until next time, happy writing!